Welcome to the 250th episode of the Zen Studies podcast. This is your host, Domio Burke. After 6.5 years of doing this podcast, I have about 4,500 regular listeners and about 300 regular supporters. So thanks to new supporting members, Jonathan from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Adam from Lake Stevens, Washington. And if you aren't already a supporter, consider joining as a member through ZenStudiesPodcast.com for as little as $5 a month. I have a small income from serving as a Zen priest, and podcast supporters help make it possible for me to focus on Zen work full-time. So thank you. Today, I want to build on an idea I presented 3 months ago in episode 244, Zazen as a Religious Act. I like to think that my thoughts on how to share the practice of Zazen are evolving, that I'm getting better at it, as opposed to just repeating myself in my many episodes singing the praises of Zen meditation. I'll let you be the judge. And if your central practice happens to be a form of meditation I would call directed effort meditation, contrasted with letting go meditation, which is how I describe Zazen or Shikantaza, I suspect you will still find something useful in what I'm going to say. So, and if you do, let me know. In Zazen as a Religious Act, I argued that our Zazen practice is not a practical or operational thing we do to achieve results, such as stress relief, greater mental health, or insight. Or, more accurately, Zazen may have some positive benefits, but these are not the most important reasons to sit. Instead, Zazen is profound and inestimable because it is our total response to life. In episode 244, I suggested letting go of viewing Zazen in a utilitarian way, which might lead you to focus on results or how well you think you're doing at it, and instead view it as your sincerest response to life. To be yourself as wholeheartedly as you can, and to fully inhabit your own life just as it is. I didn't talk much in that episode, though, about the practice of Zazen itself. What we're doing or not doing as we sit there, which makes it such a meaningful, total response to life. When it comes to Shikantaza, the practice of just sitting, an effective description is a perennial challenge for Zen teachers. It's an activity unlike any other, so any of the words we use to describe other activities are actually misleading when applied to Zazen. Dogen even said Zazen is not meditation practice. Still, Zazen is a deliberate, conscious act. It doesn't spontaneously happen any time we happen to take a seat. It's not just daydreaming or ruminating. And yet, any effort we make to manipulate our experience just gets in the way. This episode is the result of my latest reflections on the incredibly subjective and existential matter of Zazen. So the title of this episode is, In Zazen, We Stop Imposing Ourselves on the World and Meet It Instead. And that neatly summarizes what I want to say. I think this description of Zazen addresses two essential aspects of the practice: what we are not doing and what we are doing. Not doing in Zazen is very challenging. But perhaps even more challenging is remaining fully engaged once we have set aside all our agendas. From the perspective of the small self, this sounds like the most boring and useless thing in the world. This is why if we do manage to achieve a few moments of not doing, our Zazen often becomes sleepy, dull, or murky. In order to rouse ourselves or increase the energy in our sitting, we then do something again, seeing no alternative. In wholehearted Zazen, though, we have a lot to do, even though it's not the usual kind of doing. We aim to meet each moment of our meditation period as a precious moment of our life we will never experience again, which is exactly what each moment is. We set an intention to be fully and wholeheartedly present. But this presence is not about cultivating a sense that I have achieved an unbroken consciousness of each passing moment, as if we've finally managed to slow the sands of our life as they fall through that hourglass of time. In contrast, the way we show up in Zazen is deeply personal. It's about settling into your own skin bag for a time, showing up to meet the life that is unfolding within you and around you constantly, without ceasing. Meeting the world is about great intimacy, and it requires courage and strength of character. It becomes possible only when we momentarily stop imposing ourselves on the world and let things come to us. This is what Dogen meant in Genjo Koan when he said, "Conveying oneself toward all things to carry out practice enlightenment is delusion. All things coming and carrying out practice enlightenment through the self is realization." So let me first discuss the not doing of Zazen in greater depth. As we physically sit still in Zazen, in a literal sense, we have momentarily stopped imposing ourselves on the world around us. Of course, our mind doesn't necessarily become still just because our body has. It continues to generate thoughts, including ruminations about the past, worries about the future, fantasies, random daydreams. I'm calling our habitual thinking imposing ourselves on the world, because even though it's only through our thoughts, it involves actively asserting ourselves in the process of our lives, interpreting, analyzing, anticipating, planning, trying to understand, or just entertaining ourselves. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of these activities. They're an important part of our everyday lives. In Zazen, we aspire to temporarily set these endeavors aside so we can perceive what the rest of the universe is saying and doing. So we can meet life directly and intimately, instead of only interacting with it through the filter of our ideas and agendas. How do we embrace not doing with our mind? How do we stop imposing ourselves on the world in our minds? In Fukan Zazengi, or Universally Recommended Instructions for Zazen, Zen Master Dogen says, and this translation by the Sotoshu Translation Project, quote, "Do not think good or bad. Do not judge true or false. Give up the operations of mind, intellect, and consciousness. Stop measuring with thoughts, ideas, and views." End quote. And then later he also says, quote, "Think not thinking. Not thinking. What kind of thinking is that? Non-thinking. This is the essential art of Zazen. End quote. When we hear these instructions, we naturally think Zazen involves trying to slow down or stop our thinking. Don't think, don't judge, do non-thinking. So typically, people diligently practice noticing when they're caught up in thinking and then letting go and returning to the present moment. This sounds all well and good, but there's a potential trap, even in this subtle effort. When we create duality in our experience by excluding our thinking from the present moment. It's very easy to create some concept of the present moment as being the sights and sounds in our immediate environment. What's happening outside of our skin bag, or at least what's happening outside of our brain. Creating an artificial division between the present moment and the thoughts that arise in our minds is just another form of imposing ourselves on the world. The result is generally one of two things. One, the practice of letting go of thoughts and returning to the present moment doesn't really go anywhere. We sit with just as many thoughts and nothing in our Zazen really changes. We may experience benefits from the practice, but it doesn't feel particularly intimate or satisfying. The second result, if we're fairly good at concentrating, is we manage to achieve a fairly thoughtless state of mind that is pleasant and calming. This may have benefits, but we're liable to become attached to our still state of mind and consider it a victory over our unruly thoughts. A still, calm mind is nice, but Zazen is more profound than that. So how can we extricate ourselves from imposing ourselves on the world through our habitual thinking without creating a false duality and thereby imposing ourselves on the world in a more subtle way? If we simply give up any effort in Zazen, we'll usually just daydream away our meditation time. The thing is, there are different levels to our experience. When Dogen tells us to stop thinking good or bad, to stop judging true or false, and to give up the operations of mind, intellect, and consciousness, he's speaking, I think, about a kind of meta-awareness we have about our experience as a whole. A higher level awareness that includes, but is not limited to, our mind's thinking faculty. When we have meta-awareness, or you might say when our attention is wide open instead of being narrowed down onto a particular subject or activity, we're aware of what we're doing and thinking as well as other things. Our posture, what's going on around us, our feelings, the choices we're making. At a basic level, our thinking mind generates thoughts. That's just what it naturally does. In a certain sense, we're aware even when we're caught up in thoughts. I mean, we're not unconscious in the sense of being asleep or passed out, but our meta-awareness is lacking. Our attention is narrowed down on our thoughts such that we're oblivious to most other things. Until we become aware of our experience as a whole again, we lack a choice about what happens next. Then, suddenly, inexplicably, our meta-awareness returns. We recognize what's happening. That even though we sat down to meditate, we were lost in thought a moment ago. In this instant, we are no longer lost. We have choice. Now what do we do? Now, when our meta-awareness has returned, is when we refrain from thinking good or bad, judging true or false. Now is the time when we give up the operations of mind, intellect, and consciousness. In other words, we practice non-thinking, letting go of any kind of discrimination about our experience of Zazen, without differentiating between inside and outside. Whatever has just happened, we refrain from rejecting it, commenting on it, improving it, analyzing it, anything. You may have just been sitting there fantasizing about buying a new car. That's part of what was happening in that present moment a few moments ago. No different from the warm breeze or the sound of the birds singing. You had no control over those thoughts, but you have control now. What are you going to do? Identify fantasizing about a car as an unacceptable part of your reality and jerk your mind back to some arbitrary thing called the present moment? No. To do Zazen wholeheartedly, do not think good or bad about anything you experience in Zazen, including your thoughts, including the fact that you're thinking. Do not judge true or false about anything you experience in Zazen, including your thinking. Stop measuring with thoughts, ideas, and views with respect to your meditative experience, which, after all, is simply the experience of your life during the time you're sitting Zazen. Most people here do not think good or bad, or stop measuring with thoughts, ideas, and views, and assume this means they are violating these instructions when they fantasize about buying a new car in Zazen. Uh-oh, they think, there I go again, doing bad Zazen. People evaluate the quality of their Zazen based on how many thoughts intrude on their experience while they sit there. But when we interpret Dogen's instructions for Zazen to mean we should aim to stop the arising of thoughts, we are misunderstanding them entirely. It's not possible to stop the arising of thoughts. You have no choice in the matter of what pops into your head. But you do have a choice about what to do once your meta-awareness returns. If 100 thoughts arise in your mind during a 30-minute period of Zazen, and 100 times you become aware of this and think, this isn't Zazen, I have to let go of this thought and return to the present moment, you are doing exactly what Dogen asks you not to do. You are choosing to think good and bad, and choosing to measure with your thoughts, ideas, and views about Zazen and the state of your mind. If 100 thoughts arise in your mind during a 30-minute period of Zazen, and 100 times you refrain from reacting in any way to the fact that you were just thinking, you are doing perfect Zazen. Now, if we do perfect Zazen in this way, won't we simply end up embroiled in our thoughts? Surely we'll waste our time on the meditation seat if we don't make a course correction when we realize we're thinking, if we don't make an effort to let go of thoughts and return our attention to the present moment, if we don't identify being caught up in thoughts as something we're trying to avoid. This is where the other half of my latest description of Zazen comes in. After we stop imposing ourselves on the world, either through our habitual thinking or our efforts to control our meditation, we meet the world. Meeting the world is challenging because the instant we're not doing, our small self, the part identified with our desires and agendas, becomes confused and bored. When we recognize that a moment ago in our Zazen, we were caught up in fantasies of buying a new car, and we do absolutely nothing about that fact, the small self loses interest. I mean, if we're not going to fantasize and we're not going to try to improve our meditation, there's no point in sticking around for this utterly pointless exercise. We usually find our attention wandering, or find ourselves getting dull or sleepy, or find ourselves getting pulled back into another train of thought. In wholehearted Zazen, we challenge ourselves to show up in a new and refreshing way, a way that makes no sense to the small self. Despite the fact that we are not trying to get anything out of our Zazen, despite the fact that we are refraining from imposing ourselves on the world in any way, we aim to remain alert, aware, energetic, interested, and receptive. We aim to bring utter sincerity, curiosity, and enthusiasm to each moment of our Zazen, showing up as wholeheartedly as we would for our very favorite activity or form of entertainment. When we completely surrender to Zazen, there is no boredom. It doesn't matter that we're sitting there while nothing is going on in our immediate environment. Every instant, every atom, every arising is the world coming to meet us, seamlessly becoming the stuff of our life without any action necessary on the part of our small self. The thoughts that arise in our mind are part of the myriad phenomena, no more or less significant than anything else. We stop taking the thoughts personally, much less the fact that they're arising. At times, and for some people this may happen fairly often, the thoughts in our mind decrease in number and intensity. When we're deep in Zazen, they may subside completely for a matter of time. This is a valuable state that we cultivate in Sesshin, and it is to be celebrated because of the clarity it can bring. However, it is not achieved through vanquishing thoughts. It is a natural outcome of diligently refraining from imposing ourselves on the world and instead showing up to meet it. It is not a reward for strenuous effort and meditative skill. It's a matter of humility, surrender, faith, and sincerity, showing up moment after moment, inhabiting this skin bag and not trying to change a thing. Zazen may sound like a simple thing to do, but anyone who's tried it will know it's not. However, the reasons Zazen is challenging are not what we think they are. You may assume your Zazen is difficult or unsatisfying at times for the following reasons. You are new to it, and therefore haven't developed the necessary skills. You have a busy mind with lots of thoughts and feelings. You have little self-discipline in the sense that you can't control your mind. You just don't have what it takes. Whatever that is, some kind of mysterious characteristic that person over there seems to have. Or you're too distracted by physical or emotional pain. However, none of these things has anything to do with Zazen and do not present any kind of obstacle to it. I hope my description of Zazen so far in the episode has made it clear that good Zazen is not a matter of suppressing thoughts or developing some kind of special meditative skill. It's also not a matter of attaining some rarefied, blissful state that might be out of your grasp because you have to deal with pain instead. Pain, like thoughts, is simply part of what is happening in the reality that is the world not separate from self. So here are the real reasons your Zazen might be difficult or unsatisfying at times. 1, you lack faith in the practice. Now, this is perfectly understandable, especially if you're new to it. It sure doesn't sound like a very useful thing to do. And these crazy instructions to do nothing don't sound much like they'll actually work. 2, you misunderstand what Zazen is. Most people, like I said, think it's about letting go of thoughts and returning to the present moment, or aiming for a pleasant, calm, spacious state of mind with few thoughts. Something we keep hoping for, even if it eludes us most of the time. 3, you have little self-discipline in the sense that you can't make yourself sit Zazen even when it's difficult or unsatisfying. 4, you don't want to settle into this skin bag and inhabit your life wholeheartedly just as it is. You reject or resist parts of yourself or your life or the world and can't bring yourself to stop imposing yourself on the world even for a moment. And finally, you fear the intimacy of meeting the world directly and the emptiness that meeting implies. Our experience of what I call reality with a capital R, when we truly surrender to Zazen, is intense and unfamiliar. It's wonderful in the end, but the small self may dream up all kinds of fears about what will happen to us if we really let go. So what can you do about these real obstacles to Zazen? The only way to build faith in the practice of Zazen is to do it. Fortunately, long before it feels profound and transcendent, long before you think you're any good at it, the practice is inexplicably beneficial. To get over your misunderstanding about what Zazen is, notice if and when your practice is difficult and unsatisfying, and explore why, using my list of real obstacles as an entry gate. Don't just assume you should try harder at what you've already been doing, or that you don't have what it takes and just need to accept blasé Zazen. Lack of self-discipline is a tougher obstacle, but if you manage to sit, even when you don't particularly enjoy it, you will hopefully experience some benefits. And then these can inspire you to sit more. Over time, your faith in the practice, your appetite for the practice should increase, especially if you can attend session. An unwillingness to settle into this skin bag and inhabit your life wholeheartedly is a huge obstacle to Zazen. Probably the primary one we face throughout our practice lives. There are countless reasons we reject or resist parts of ourselves, our lives, or the world. These reasons may be obvious, such as physical or mental illness, suffering injustice, or poverty. They can also be judgments we make about ourselves or subtle reasons not to be satisfied. Much of our non-Zazen practice is aimed at studying the self and gradually learning to accept ourselves and embrace our Buddha nature. This work can help our Zazen. Zazen can also help the rest of our work. And it may be useful to keep in mind that when we sit, we are only temporarily refraining from imposing ourselves on the world, only temporarily setting aside any effort to figure things out, attain things, take care of things, create things, or improve things. Sitting Zazen wholeheartedly does not mean we give up all of our life activities. No more than getting a good night's sleep means we never again get out of bed. In Zazen, we restore balance so we can meet the world directly and be more present in our everyday lives. Finally, we can gradually overcome our fears about what will happen to us if we surrender completely to Zazen. If we really meet the world in an undefended way and see how superfluous the small self really is in the grand scheme of things. It's permanently liberating to face our fears of isolation, annihilation, groundlessness, voidness, and meaninglessness, and find that reality with a capital R is none of these things. However, it wouldn't be a good idea to face all of our fears at one fell swoop, even if that was possible. Instead, we face a little bit at a time, like dipping our toe into cool water, then stepping in up to our ankles, then slowly wading in. So that's it for today. I will be back very soon with another episode. I hope you'll tune in. Thanks for listening.